if you're on Ozempic and they're looking at them as longevity drugs. But if you're just doing it and you're not getting resistance training, you are becoming sarcopenic. You're wasting your muscle, you're losing fat, and when you regain the weight later, your body fat percentage will be higher than when you started.
And your muscle density will be lower. And these drugs are fabulous to a certain extent, but when you're losing fat, you're losing muscle too. You might be thinner, maybe your blood pressure's down and your heart rate's lower, and there's some other health issues that come with it. But forget about carrying your luggage up the escalator when it goes out, because you're not going to have the strength to get up there.
Hello there, Orthopreneurs, and welcome to another episode of your Orthopreneurs podcast. Today is a special day for me because, I love all of my guests who come in, but today's guest played a huge role in my life, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But please, everybody, put your hands together for the amazing, the indomitable, Mr. Tony Horton. Welcome, Tony.
Hello, Glenn. How are you today? Fired up. Let's go.
Yeah. What I love about Tony is, for those of you, first of all, who may or may not remember this, back in 2020, when Orthopreneurs Summit didn't happen because of COVID, we did a virtual summit, and Tony was nice enough to do 2 individual workouts that he recorded in his studio at home that we played the 2 mornings of the summit. And so I know there's a huge number of people out here listening right now who are fans of yours, Tony, whose lives you've impacted. And I want to say thank you for 2020's videos.
My pleasure.
And thank you.
I had nothing going on either, so it was great that you gave me something to do. So I appreciate that, Glenn.
Got you out of the house, right?
Yeah.
Into the studio.
Got me into another part of the house, but that's fine.
And so I'll start it off like this. The beautiful thing about these interviews is you get a chance to talk to your guest before you start, just to kind of recap and touch base and see where they are. And I had the opportunity to tell Tony what I'm about to tell all of you, which is back in about 2000 and what year was P90X? Did it come out? 2001?
Well, 20 years ago. I was 46. I'm 66. Do the math.
2004.
2004.
Yeah. So in 2004, up until then, I was doing triathlons. I was loving running. I was living in Seattle, Washington. I was out running, biking, swimming in Lake Washington in the morning with a wetsuit. It was amazing. And then twins came along in 2004, March 19th of 2004. I had twins, and I told myself, I'm going to keep this going. And Sunday mornings, I'd wake up at 4 a.m. I'd bike for 7 hours, be home by 11. It was just unsustainable. And so P90X came out at the perfect time because it took an outdoor boy and made him an indoor boy so that I could wake up early, get a good, hour-long workout, unless you were doing Yoga X, which was like 7 hours long.
And the fact that you did that hour and a half is impressive. Most people did.
I'll be the first to tell you, Yoga X kicked my ass. And probably I got the first 45 minutes done. And then when you started getting into the static poses, of the tree, I think was the first one.
Tree pose and Royal Dancer, et cetera.
Yeah, Royal Dancer. Oh, but the fact is, I'd say probably 1 out of every 3 times I would do the second half of that because it was so long. But my point is, if it wasn't for you, my fitness journey may have ended when the twins came along. And I would have ended up on the same journey that so many people we know are on. But thanks to you, and you called it yourself beforehand, and I'll say it again, your quirky nature and the fact that you love to have fun spoke to me. And as I told you earlier, I think a lot of the exercises that people are doing out there, push-ups, pull-ups, it's not new. It's been around forever. But you need somebody who's going to inspire you, who's going to motivate you, who's going to make it fun, who's going to make you want to keep, like you said, keep push and play. Keep push and play. And I did. And it's thanks to you. And I know there's a ton of people out there. So I want to start by just saying thank you. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
My pleasure, man. I feel very fortunate, very lucky to have been placed in the position to be able to help inspire, motivate, and educate folks. And my background, I think, is different than a lot of other trainers. I think the reason why we sold 11 million DVDs of P90X. In 20 years, it's pretty psycho. And we haven't made DVDs in the longest time. Everything's streaming now. But the fact that we sold that many in that time frame is freakish because there was nothing else like it. The set was really cool and the casts were friends and they were really cool. And the routines were unique and different than anything. And the whole muscle confusion thing, which is a made up term, like, there's no such thing as muscle confusion. I know, because we made it up. And now there is, because we made it up and people do it and it works. People working on their weaknesses more than their strengths, and that kind of a thing. Just getting people uncomfortable, giving them modifications and things. They can go hardcore. They can mellow out if they need to. So it really was, and it was just the way that I trained, my celebrities, Tom Petty, Billy Idol, Annie Lennox, Bruce Springsteen, those folks and others, and a lot of other clients, because I just knew that kind of variety would just keep people from, like I said, from getting bored, injured, or plateauing. And so that's still the way I train, and nothing's changed since. And the odd thing is that no one's ever tried to really duplicate it. You would think you would see. I mean, there were a couple of versions, people trying to not intimidate,
They can
impersonate me
intimidate while
in some
imitating.
way, but it's hard, you know what I mean? Because I have had my life up to this point, and all the experiences that I've had. So, yeah, I mean, it was just unique that way, and thank God that we decided to get outside our comfort zone, to put people outside of theirs. So the combination worked.
You said something really interesting, by the way, there along the way, where you talked about muscle confusion. Because one of the things I talk a ton about with orthodontists and other entrepreneurs is the idea of a unique selling mechanism. And when you have a unique selling mechanism, you need to name it. And you need to name it something that nobody else can compare to. Because P90X had muscle confusion. No other workout you could work out with Sean T. He didn't have muscle confusion, right? No. And so I was trying to tell orthodontists that whatever you're doing in your practice is likely not a whole lot different than the other high-end practices, but give it a name. Name it, because then nobody can compare to you. And it doesn't mean that naming it and making up a name demeans it in any way. It just gets people into your funnel in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. And I've been trying to say that for years. So it was great to hear you talk about that.
Well, it's hard to introduce something new into the lexicon, right? So, whatever it is, like it's really neat that you can create something that didn't exist 10 minutes before, and then over the course of time make it so popular that everybody knows about it. And so that's what we did. And as you and I were talking before we got on, the other factor, the other variable here is that I'm a goofy dude, and I try to make fitness fun, and I'm pretty good at the cueing thing, and so cueing is everything. Especially, for example, if you're doing the yoga, right? You're in downward dog. You can't see what I'm doing, or you got to, it's got to be all about how I describe it. Spread your fingers, straighten your arms, drive your booty into the sky, get the heels to the floor. Like I visualize what it's supposed to look like properly, and hopefully that translates into the people who are watching. And that's just that either you're good at that or you're not. There's a lot of trainers with all these degrees and certifications, but they're kind of boring and they're kind of dull, and they don't translate the message very well. And, their audience is smaller than mine is. And so, it's all good, and we're all helping somebody, but it's nice to be popular.
I agree. And you are popular. And by the way, we're going to talk more before this is all done about what you're doing now. So people who do want to tune back in, and we're going to get to that journey along the way. And also the possibility of maybe, just maybe, probably we'll get you talking at Summit in 2025. In Las Vegas. Would be great to get you on stage.
There.
Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be great to get you in Vegas. Maybe, just maybe, we can talk into a workout. Who knows? We'll talk.
Why not? I usually do. When I come and do a speech, I do both. I do both.
Right on.
So
I'll be front row.
I'll do a workout in the morning, and then the speech later, or right after, or whatever. It's something that we schedule into the.
I'm gonna give a shout out while I said I'll be front row with Stephen Blackburn. I got to throw Stephen's name out there, because Stephen is one of your most ardent fans. When I visited,
he'll be on stage. He'll be on stage. With me.
He will be on stage, I'm sure. Because when I visited University of Detroit, Mercy, for an interview or to visit with them back in 2011. He was already such a huge follower, and he was ripped to shreds. And I know he's a huge fan. So I had to give a Stephen Blackburn shout out here.
I'm sure he'll be thrilled when he sees this.
Let's go back to the beginning and give us just like a short intro of how did you end up going from the Tony. We know that it's well said already by you on social media and over the years that, you weren't living a great life physically. And then there was a teacher in high school who basically said, look, you don't have to become Hercules. You don't have to become a 4-minute miler. Just like you say later on, just keep pushing play. Just keep pushing play. Keep showing up, do the workouts. And he changed your life. How did you go from there to the Tony Horton we all know about today?
Oh, I have a made up term called
muscle confusion.
Well, yeah, right. Kismetipity. A lot of things, serendipity and kismet mixed together, kismetipity. Everything, like the way I met my wife, it's just an absolute fluke. It's a series of things, unpredictable things that happened in a sequence where I meet this girl who, 6 years later, she's my best friend, and we just love each other madly. I mean, I didn't ever think I was ever going to get married, and I never thought I was going to be a fitness trainer. Same thing. I mean, I came out to California in 1980 with $400 in my pocket, ran out of money in Boulder, and because I was a street performer, I started doing some mime in the street in Boulder and made $125 in an afternoon, and then got my way to Huntington Beach, and I was painting houses and doing handyman work, whatever I could do. I'd go down to the pier when I ran out of money. I'd go into Westwood where UCLA was, and I would start doing some more pantomime and doing silly stuff. And I would, do these little stage bits. But, I mean, and I wasn't really working out yet. I mean, a couple of years prior when I was in college, I took that weightlifting course, and the gentleman that taught it was funny and cool and like a pal. He wasn't like a typical professor or instructor. He just made it palatable for me. He made it enjoyable for me. And I did it mostly for aesthetics at that point because I was young and I wanted girlfriends. And I thought a big chest and pecs would get me hooked up. But it turns out you needed personality and some money in the bank too. And you need to be honest and you need to be like normal, which I was those things, but now I was those things with some muscles. But then of course, the semester ended and that was that. And I was off to California, doing all these odd jobs. And I eventually got a job as a gopher or a PA, a production assistant for a woman who made Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Sting with Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and Taxi Driver with De Niro. And it was a pretty neat gig because she would let me go on auditions. And her partner was a guy who was formerly in the music industry. At this time, I'm with Second City LA. I'm playing around with some stand-up comedy. I was on a talk show, but I used to go back and forth to Minneapolis and do stuff with Nordic Track. So I'm just, working on my acting skills and taking scene study classes and improv classes. And that's, doing what any actor would do who comes out to California while I had this job, running around town, making coffee and delivering scripts and whatever I was doing, changing light bulbs. I mean, whatever they gave me to do, I would do it. And I was on the 20th Century Fox lot, which was really cool because movie stars were everywhere. And like, wow, look at me. It kind of feels like I'm an actor, even though I'm not making any movies. But I did commercials. I was in a couple of Schwarzenegger movies, tiny little roles. And that was that. It was
now
all
you got to drop
good.
names. If you were in a Schwarzenegger movie, I need to know what movie it was because I'm going to go find this.
The 13th Warrior was not a Schwarzenegger movie, but The 13th Warrior is an Antonio Banderas movie. And then A Last Action Hero was the other one.
I love that movie.
Last Action Hero, which is pretty cool. Old silly movie. But the original movie was a Michael Crichton novel called Eaters of the Dead that became The 13th Warrior. And I have two little tiny roles in that, but I'm covered in prosthetics. Look for the scene where an eater of the dead, the Vin, we were called the Vin. We were these like crazy half human, half werewolves. And I took an arrow to the eye, which is a fun shot that we did. But, so I was having this lifestyle and I was starting to exercise because my agent at that time said, hey man, if you want to work more, you got to be in better shape. And so Julia Phillips's partner, a guy by the name of Harlan Goodman, who was formerly in the music industry, who was also my boss. So the two of them were my bosses. And he was noticing my transformation. He was noticing that I was getting leaner and more fit and everything else. And he's like, dang, man, you've changed in the 3 months that we've hired you. I go, well, when you first hired me, I just got an agent sort of at the same time. And it was time for me to get in shape. He goes, well, why don't you train me? Now, look, I didn't have any certification. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing the things that I learned from that class in college 2 years before. And I was also a member of 4 different gyms at that point.
Oh my
and
God.
I was in there. I was in World Gym, and there's Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno, and I'm just taking notes. Like, what are they doing? Like, I would just spy on them, And then I would put my bosses, put him through sort of the same thing, Harlan Goodman, and he lost 30 pounds. And toward the end of our tenure there with Julia, she was pretty nuts. I mean, she'd fire me every Friday if I forgot to change a light bulb or whatever it was, and he'd call me up on Sunday night and go, "You're not fired, dude. Come on back." But it was chaos. So they couldn't make a movie to save their lives. Anyway, to make a long story good, he leaves. And when he leaves, I think it's time for me to leave, right? I can't, so I'm going to go back to, building furniture and being a handyman and doing mime at the pier. And I had a couple other clients already just because they had seen Harlan's results. I was training these 2 doctors and I went, all right, I can maybe pull this off. I don't need to be with this chaos anymore. So he goes back to East End Management, which is a music management company. And he sees Tom Petty walking down the hallway, and he sees Harlan. He's smoking a cigarette, of course. He says, "Hey, Harlan, you look fantastic. Holy crap. How much weight did you lose? 100 pounds?" And Harlan goes, "Well, I lost like 40. Well, I'm going on tour and I'm fat. Nobody likes a fat rocker. So how'd you do it?" So he said, "Call Tony Horton." And so Harlan forgets to tell me that Tom Petty is going to call me at my apartment. And so my roommate picks up, and my roommate thinks it's one of my buddies downstairs screwing around. So he hangs up on Tom Petty. And I write about it in the book. And then Tom calls back and says, "I think we got disconnected." And then Bob, my roommate, goes, "Dude, this sounds like Tom Petty." So anyway, next day I go to Tom's house. I get him ready for the tour. I have him for 4 months. And he's ripped and striated, and his voice is better, and his stamina's through the roof. And then Billy Idol called, and then Annie Lennox called, and then Sean Connery and Shirley MacLaine, and the beat goes on. So now I'm a celebrity trainer. And then I met Carl Deichler along the way. He was one of the clients that I was training, hired Carl. And Carl and I became friends. And Carl was in the infomercial business with this guy, Ben Vanderbunt. And he goes, "Hey, man, with all the stuff that you do and your crazy sense of humor and your comedy, let's shoot this thing called Great Body Guaranteed." And so he did. And I was kind of stiff because I wasn't really sure that I could be myself yet. But it worked. And then so the next one was called Power 90. Sold 5 million copies of Power 90, and I had royalties, and I got to pay off my $60,000 debt. I got to move out of my apartment of 21 years, and I bought a nice 4-bedroom home. And then I didn't have any money for furniture in that home, but that's fine. And then we did, after that, Power 90 did so great. All these investors came out of the woodwork, like, who's this Tony Horton guy? And who's this Carl Deichler guy? And Carl's like, "What should we do next?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's make it easier," because it seemed really hard. He goes, "No, let's make it harder." And so we made P90X, and the beat goes on. So, and then X2 and then X3 and then 22-minute hardcore and I don't know, half dozen other workouts.
I did every one of them. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because everybody knows the isms. And I was talking to Tony beforehand, and like the easiest one to remember, my brain just blanked because here's Tony Horton.
Forgot on the forget, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, which is great. It's like,
do your best and
do your best and what the rest? I can't remember.
Do your best and I forgot what the rest is. Well, you almost got it.
My favorite moment of Eddie P90X 1, 2, 3, whatever you've done, my favorite moment is when you cue in every one of the videos, you'd always cue up that statement somewhere. What do I always say, guys? Do your best and, right? It goes, "I got him trained," right? I remember you said that. I may have been plyometrics or something when you said that. But the funniest one is Scotty Pfeiffer. Was it Scotty Pfeiffer? He says it so matter-of-factly, like, "Do your best and," he's like, "Forget the rest." It was just like the way he said it was so funny. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. And it's really nice to see your Facebook page and to see guys like Scotty Pfeiffer and the people you spend time with.
Still working out with them. Yeah.
At one point, Bobby Stevenson, he had posted something. He showed up on my feed, and I just he did something, a movie or something, and I wrote back. I was like, "Hey, man, good work. And by the way, really appreciated your inspiration, and you're killing it," because the models play just as big of a role in many respects as the person running it. Because if they can't do it, you're not going to do it. And so watching, you and Bobby Stevenson, let's just say, going head to head with pull-ups, right? And Bobby said, "Note to self, never, ever challenge Tony again." Right? I still remember these things.
Yeah, right.
You remember that one, right? And
dude, even now with all the new workouts, like people will email me or text or find me somehow, and I'll go into one of the Facebook pages or on Instagram, and I go, "Here's my new favorite quote." Like, I guess I said like a butterfly on crack cocaine. I don't know. These things just come out of my mouth, and they just thought, a butterfly on crack cocaine. I've never heard those words put together again.
I like that. But I reached out to Bobby. He's just on my Facebook. I just clicked on his thing and sent him a message like, "Hey, Bobby, thanks for your inspiration, blah, blah, blah." Never expecting to hear anything. The guy wrote back like 2 hours later. He's like, he had a birthday, and I said, "Happy birthday" to him. He's like the nicest guy on the planet.
No, he's freak. I think he's a mass murderer, honestly. He's just too damn nice. There's something up there, man. I don't know what's going on.
So in your story, right, at some point along the way, Tony Horton's no longer working with Beachbody. And I know you're probably limited in some of the things you can say. All I can tell you is the culture there, to me as an end user, changed dramatically. It went from trying to serve the people who put them on the map, who at the time were 30-something-year-old Gen Xers who were loving what you guys were doing. And then all of a sudden I woke up one day and it was a whole bunch of new people in there who I'd never heard of, who were doing exercise routines, quite honestly, that were way too bouncy, for lack of a better word, than anything I needed for my knees and my back. And I felt abandoned at that point. And then you and I chatted a couple of years ago, and you started your new platform. You're trying to build your new stuff. And again, it was a little bit tough because it was computer based. It wasn't like a streaming service. But good news, Hortonites out there. You like that? I can come up with terms too, Tony. I just
Yeah,
want to say
nice.
it.
Well, Glenn killed it on that
Yeah,
one.
there you go. Hortonites. For those of you,
Hortonians.
it sounds like a type of mineral. I just discovered
You
Hortonite.
take the last name and the first name and you go Hortonians. You see what we did there?
Ooh,
Hortonians.
Hortonians.
It rolls
And you
right
got
off the tongue.
everything together. Like
Or Horton Heads. A lot of people, Horton Heads is popular as well.
I prefer Hortonians. That's got a good ring to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Just made that up.
So so for those of you Hortonians out there who would like more Tony Horton, let's talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing now, because I want to get into that. And I also want to get into, I think that'll segue really nicely into the next section. So talk first about fitness. For those of us who say, look, we like turning on our TV, we like hitting play every day without a DVD, CD, which, by the way, you can buy those still on eBay. Ask me how I found out.
Right.
You can.
I found one from my uncle. My uncle's 90, and it was called Tony and the Folks. I did Tony and the Kids for like little kids, and I did Tony and the Folks for for older folks over 75 up to as old as 95. And so it's like, and he doesn't know how to stream. I mean, he's 90 years old. He just knew how to put the DVD in, and I had to search on eBay, but I found it still in a wrapper. Tony and the Folks.
I got mine in a wrapper still, and again, he puts it into his DVD player, which sits right below his television, which is on top of the old giant television that he never threw out, right?
My uncle?
Your uncle. It sits on top of a giant.
That sounds about right.
Giant piece of wood furniture TV that then has a doily on top of it with the VCR player, and then the new TV sitting right on top of it.
Oh my gosh.
That's law.
Yes. Yeah, the old TV just props up the new one.
Exactly.
And the DVD player.
So
all that tech is gone now. Should be.
Yeah. Tell me and tell everybody out there, if we want to be a current, Hortonian, what are some of our options for fitness if we want to get back into your ecosystem?
Well, when you and I were talking a couple of years back, we were in the early stages of building our own platform, especially with COVID, like what the heck are we going to do with ourselves? So I was spending a lot of time with just my friends. I mean, nobody was coming over. And I have people at my house, friends of mine, at my house 6 days a week, and we work out Monday through Sunday, except for Saturdays off. And when we couldn't do that anymore, we all were doing Zoom workouts. And so I would prop my laptop up on a plyo box, and I would run the session, and everybody would be at home, and it was completely archaic and crazy, but we did what we had to do. And Sean was like, you've done so many of these workouts for your friends. Why don't we just record one or two of them and save them? I mean, you've got them all written down. And so as we were kind of clearing out of the pandemic and we were a little freaked out, even some of our early workouts, like the 3 or 4 of us were wearing masks. We were shooting them and putting them out to the world. Of course, 20% of the people think we were murdering their children because we were wearing masks. Like, get over yourselves already. Can I go through this my way? You go through it your way, and maybe you won't die, and maybe I won't either. But like, why judge? It's just crazy, right? So, but 80% of the people didn't have their head up their ass. So they said, hey, they're wearing masks, but they're at least providing a service for us, and it's great. And then, as things kind of mellowed out, we said, well, we've got so many. I had I had like 30 something routines that I had created over the course of the pandemic. So I filtered out, I grabbed 24 of them. And our first program on the Power Nation platform was called the Power of 4. So I did P90X 1 and 2 and 3. I couldn't call it P90X 4, but it's basically P90X 4.
We won't tell anybody.
Right, because they own that. Beachbody owns that. And the Power of 4, P90X had 12 routines. The Power of 4 has 24 routines. So there's a lot of talking about super muscle confusion, where we were able to really mix things up.
There's a new one, super muscle confusion.
Super muscle confusion. It's an acronym somehow in some way. Yeah. And then that was the first one. Then we brought in another person to do theirs. And now we have 9 trainers on the Power Nation platform. We just released Ashley Cabanillas' dance routine, which is just, the gals are digging it. We also made one with Dr. Mindy Pels who wrote a book called Fast Like a Girl, and her whole thing when she did P90X was that she modified the hell out of the schedule because she's a woman, and the schedule was kind of designed for both men and women when I created it. But I'd always say, hey, look, gals, if you're having a tough time and you got some weight to lose and you're a certain age, then modify it here. Move past the 90 days. Maybe you don't be using 20, 50-pound dumbbells. Use twos and threes and fives. But she did the program and got ridiculous results, had tons of energy throughout because of her hormonal fluctuations. Just change it. If it was a yoga day, she did chest and back. If it was a stretch X, then she would do, she was always just messing with it because she had the scientific background. And so I designed 11 routines. It's called Power Sync 60. Men are doing it too because there's a men's schedule just because the routines are solid. And so the guys are doing it, but a lot of women are loving Power Sync 60. And a lot of women, and that demographic you're talking about, the older 50, 60, 70-year-olds don't feel wasted. They don't feel discouraged. They feel like this program is, made for them. And I created stop options. Almost all our new routines with our trainers have stop options. Basically, one of the main reasons why people didn't do P90X or couldn't get through P90X or, started and stopped it 50 times. It's like, oh my God, this yoga is an hour and a half, or oh my God, this chest and back is an hour. And so we put these at least minimum 1 and mostly 2 stop options, which meant, hey, get through the first 15 minutes. And then you'd see a red line at the bottom, stop option. You can take it if you want to. You got things to do, place to go, people to meet. Maybe you don't want to go to the next one, but at least you showed up and did something. Just fast forward to the cool down. And so, here we are. And that's sort of the main bulk of my wife is really running the whole show. I'm also on Tonal. I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tonal.
I am.
LeBron James is advertising that a lot on the
I don't use it, but I don't disagree with it. It's a great idea. I think you and I would agree that whatever you're doing, get some fitness in your life. If it means you got to get a Tonal, get a Tonal. If it means you got to do what Tony Horton's presenting to you, do it. If it means getting out of your house at lunch and walking around the block, just do something.
Do that.
And I want to get back to how people can have access to your stuff in just a minute or two. But since we're on the topic of it, I think I raised some eyebrows and got in a little bit of trouble in my group about 2 years ago when I said, look, if you're on a bike and that's all you do is you bike and you bike and you bike, that's all well and good. But if you're like me, or you're a man over 40, 45, you need to be getting yourself some weight. You need to do some resistance training. You've got to get muscle mass stacked before the aging process naturally removes it. And I got a lot of pushback. No, running is
sarcopenia. It's a real scientific term. Describes.
And if you're on Ozempic or you're on any, and I'm not against them. I mean, I take a small dose myself. I have no problem with it. The GLP-1 the agonists are great, and they're looking at them as longevity drugs. But if you're just doing it and you're not getting resistance training, you are becoming sarcopenic because you're wasting your muscle, you're losing fat, and when you regain the weight later, your body fat percentage will be higher than when you started.
And your muscle density will be lower.
Exactly.
I mean, these drugs are fabulous to a certain extent, but when you're losing fat, you're losing muscle too. And so you might be thinner and maybe your blood pressure's down and your heart rate's lower and there's some other health issues that come with it. But, forget about carrying your luggage up the escalator when it goes out because you're not going to have the strength to get up there. So, it's all about prioritizing. I mean, sure, we all, we live in the United States, which is all about looks. Unfortunately, it really is not about character, not about honor, not about trust, not about authenticity. It's about, may the sexiest woman and the most macho looking dude win, which is pathetic in a way.
Says the guy living in LA.
What's that?
Says the guy who lives in LA and is surrounded by it, literally.
I know, man.
You walk out your front door.
I know, man. And look, I dye my beard. I ain't gonna lie. See that? I have to. But that I don't have to dye, and I'm tired of. Yeah, you should check it out, man. It only takes.
I dye mine white just because it gives me wisdom.
Well, I would. We're gonna get into my beard now. This is black. Normally black. This is every color under the sun. This is completely white, and this is black and white. So when it's kind of like yours, like how yours is mixed up like that.
Right.
And so, I'm on camera.
I'm Tony's lost brother. I'm just his 10-year younger brother. I've got the black beard. So if you didn't do anything, this is what you'd end up with.
Similar mix. Yeah. You have patches where I have both.
If I shave out the white, I can have a whaling captain's beard.
Yeah, man. Yeah, just get rid of it. Just shave out the white, and you have a really cool look. Anyway, to make a long story good, dude, it really is about functionality, and it's about being able to, like, for example, a lot of people who are exercising, they're doing their cardio and they're doing their weight training, they're doing their hypertrophy or whatever you want to call it, body weight training. They're not working on speed, balance, and range of motion, right? So those folks are just as vulnerable as anybody else who's doing nothing. You know what I mean? Right. Older folk, like there's a study out that says that 80% of Americans after the age of 30 will never run as fast as they can ever again.
80% of Americans.
80% of Americans will never sprint ever again. They might have to jog from here to there, or they might go for a run. But most Americans, after are petrified of running fast.
That's interesting.
Which is kind of sad, Like me, my goal by 70 is to be the top 10 fastest 70-year-olds in the country. So I've been doing a lot of sprint lately. I'm really excited.
You got 4 years, man.
I got 4 years. You know, and I'm not a fast runner. I'll run 6.5 miles. At whatever, like a 12-minute pace, but I like sprinting. 100 meters, 200 meters is fun, man, but you got to warm up for 45 minutes because your hamstrings are going to go bye-bye, right? They'll just go like that.
Lesson.
How many guys are playing softball and they hit that ball and they're running to first base, right?
Exactly.
Because they haven't run fast in decades. So,
So there's my question. What do you tell the 40-year-old, 45-year-old who's fit, but all they do is they run, or all they do is they swim, or all they do is marathons, and
all they do is lift weights,
right?
Too.
And they say, "I'm in good shape. I don't need to lift weights," and they don't realize that if they're a long distance runner and they're over 40, they're killing themselves. They're literally shortening their lifespans because of the sarcopenic. Muscle mass is directly related to longevity. We know that. Right.
For a fact.
Yeah. So I'm glad we're speaking the same language here. Let's transition a little bit.
Can I tell you a short story on one reason to solve that? Now, this will be me pitching something that I think is helpful for folks.
Pitch it.
So when I got sick in 2017, I got Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. I got sick as a dog and I couldn't get out of bed for 3 months. And it took me a whole year to be able to function again. And I ended up losing close to 30 pounds, like 27 pounds and all. And so I wasn't with Beachbody anymore. And that was partly why I got sick, because I freaked out. Why would this company let me go after 20 years of service and being their number one guy? Like, okay, whatever. That and the fact that my buddy Tom Petty died about the same time. So I was in a bad way.
That was heartbreaking.
Yeah, man, just the worst. And so when I met with, I'm like, okay, how am I going to make money again? How do I, so I met with Tonal and I got that gig, and then Sean and I started our thing, our Power Nation thing. And then I was fortunate enough to meet with a group called Golden Hippo, which is kind of a funky name. But they wanted to formulate some stuff for me to help me get back on my feet. So they created something called Foundation 4, which had prebiotics, probiotics, magnesium, sun fiber, and 2 servings of vegetables. Beachbody had a similar product called Shakeology, but it had so many things in it I didn't need. One of them was causing like weird lumps on my head. I don't know. I think it was
By the way, your commercial for Shakeology after the workouts is epic.
Funny.
When you were working behind the counter.
The cash register. Yeah, and a lot of that was improv. That was improv, a lot of it, not all of it.
Were amazing.
Yeah, man. That was fun too. And Shakeology is a decent product, helped a lot of people, but I just wanted something that was very specific to my gut health. So they created that for me. But also when we were developing protein powders, we developed a whey and a plant base. And I just said, hey man, I've got this very expensive whey protein and I can't get strong again. My testosterone's in the toilet. And I said, well, they said we're going to put something called HMB and vitamin D mixing with chromium. So HMB is like a enzyme, hormone, amino acid. I wish I knew exactly what it was, but large doses of it in a lot of studies, New England Journal of Medicine and stuff. It's like these older folks coming out of surgery that were taking HMB and vitamin D3 because the two of them have to work together. They were just gaining muscle again. And I started taking this stuff and it was freakish, man. I mean, I'm not.
And I take it, by the way, with creatine. Every morning I take creatine HMB after my workout.
Oh, great. You take that combination. Oh, great. Creatine is magic. I mean, a lot of people are afraid to think it's going to mess with their kidneys and their liver. Yeah, if you do a cup of it, when you abuse anything, it's going to be a problem. Like high school wrestlers, they're doing this with creatine, like a 1 cup. I can't move my arms. Yeah, because, you just got to be smart when you take the right amount. That's kind of key. But that really helped. And then a friend of mine I just talked to yesterday, I hadn't talked to in 5 years. He had gained 100 pounds and he just lost 100 pounds. And so
Wow.
he has, and he's not quite my age. He's about your age, about 10 years younger than I am. And he goes, I got all this loose skin and I can't get my muscle back. I go, dude, you have sarcopenia full on. So I just sent him 3 jars of my plant-based protein. And I'm curious to see how he does with it, but I think that'll help. And that's part of the equation, right? You got to lift, right? You don't have to lift heavy. You can go high rep, low weight, but just you got to activate the muscle. And then you got to take some kind of supplement for protein synthesis. You can do all the bacon and bologna and steaks in the world and eggs in the world, but if it's not getting into the muscles, into the fibers and doing what it's supposed to do. And that's what HMB and vitamin D does. And social creatine helps as well. Sure.
So if people want to buy your supplements, where do they go?
mypowerlife.com.
mypowerlife.com.
And then there's a code, put in the Tony 30 code, TONY 30, no spaces.
All your Hortonians. Remember that.
The Hortonians, put in the Tony 30 code.
I love that. And that'll be fantastic. And again, I'm sure on the website, it explains more about what these are and how they work.
What they are and what they do. And there's 9 SKUs. There's an endurance product for people who do cardio. It's all about keeping that Krebs cycle going, keeping that ATP in the muscle so you can keep on keeping on.
Now you're speaking to my audience.
Staving off the lactic acid that creates the problems.
Yeah. If I never hear about the Krebs cycle again the rest of my life, I'll be happy.
Yeah, because you went to med school.
The final electron receptor is oxygen. Nobody ever forgets that board question. That is the final electron receptor in Krebs cycle is oxygen. I don't know how I remember that. It's just one of those things. Man. But now going back to fitness, if somebody wants to get involved with your fitness routines and see Tony on their TV every day, where do they go for that?
PowerNationFitness.com. PowerNationFitness.com. And you go in there and you look around. The first 2 weeks are free. It's a beautiful website. It came out really, really good. Everything's easy to access. You see all the different kind of trainers. And we make suggestions on, there's a little thing you fill out to kind of figure out what you really need to be doing. If you're a gal and you're this age and you're looking to lose weight, or if you're this dude, you want to gain muscle. And there's a very extensive diet thing in there that's not specific to any type of a person. It's just sort of an education on healthy food and what to eat. And, our whole platform is based on diet, exercise, supplementation, and mindfulness. And P90X didn't have the mindfulness component because it wasn't hip and trendy and cool then. You just go in there and you kick your own ass for 6 days a week and take your supplements. And hopefully your mindfulness practice is a decent night's sleep, which most people aren't getting anyway. You know what I mean? And so it's the mindfulness component. And of course, in my Power of 4, there's 2 meditation work sessions that are critical to help your body heal, to help your body recover, to help get your calm your brain down from all the crazy stress in your life and from the workouts if you're going for it. And that's a key piece, because a lot of people go, man, I just do that 3-part breath work thing, and I just feel like I've smoked a bowl and I didn't have to,
It's fun. It's funny you bring that up. And again, this is kind of a self-selecting group, right? Like the reason I'm doing this now is because we're very like-minded. It's not as if I'm some guy who's sitting on a couch eating chips all day long, 75 pounds overweight. Not that I'm judging, but we wouldn't be having this conversation because I wouldn't be sort of syncing with who Tony Horton is. I will tell you that just yesterday, I competed in my first ever Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament because about 14 months ago, the bug bit me. I needed to get faster, more flexibility. I needed to do the stuff that I wasn't doing from weightlifting. And I used to do a lot of Shotokan karate. So I got started with the whole concept of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And yesterday, I pushed myself outside my limits, went to Austin and got involved in a tournament. And the whole point of this is 2 things. One, I posted on Facebook, and I'm going to recount it in just a minute because it reminds me of you. But the first one is that in this room, let's call it 500 contestants in this room. The overwhelming majority of them are in really good shape. Why? Because like wrestlers, at any given age, you must make weight for your division. So there's an ultra heavyweight division,
right.
big people. But like, for instance, for me, I'm considered a lightweight at 168. And so that has to be with your uniform. So I got to weigh 164 to make 168. And so I'm working hard, watching what I'm eating, making sure.
Gotcha.
So everybody in the room, no matter what weight division they're in, male, female, not children, they're just age. you got to make your weight. So in this room is all of these really fit people who aren't afraid of putting on their gi or their rash guard and seeing their tops. And people are fit. But what they don't spend a lot of time on is mental fitness. I've never been around as many people who are in such great shape, but don't spend as much time on, and many do, but generally when I speak to them, meditation, breath work, self-improvement, therapy. And part of that could be just endemic to a certain age. You get to a point in life and realize how important this stuff is.
I'm looking on my bulletin board here. I have my 10 mindfulness practices. Maybe I pulled it down. I shared it with somebody else, and I pulled it down.
If you have a link to it on any of your sites,
I've done a Tuesday talk on Instagram, and I've talked about it a couple of times.
I know your first one is do your best, forget the rest is number one.
No. I mean, when I mean mindfulness, like I'm talking about gardening, I'm talking about listening to music, I'm talking about hanging out with your pets, I'm talking about going for walks, I'm talking about taking naps, I'm talking about meditation and breath work and whatever it is, you know what I mean? It's all about the healing. I'm talking about, infrared saunas and cold plunges and
red light therapy, baby.
Foam rollers and Theraguns and bada boom. What do you got? What are you going to show me?
Oh, it's a mannequin.
You're pulling your cold plunge over to the
sleeve. I got my red light therapy machine right next to me.
There you go, baby. Yeah, man.
Every morning for 40 minutes. As I'm doing work, I put on, don't laugh. I put on my
ski goggles,
infrared ski goggles, put on my prescription glasses underneath it, and I do work while I get infrared front, back, sides, wherever. I just don't know what life is like without it.
I'm a sponsorship for Sunlighten infrared, and they're amazing. They're beautiful, and you can get a single, you can get a double, they have ones as big as 4 people. And I have mine outside, looking out at at my view here. It's pretty sick. It's pretty nice to sit. And so what I'll do a workout, and I'll jump in, or I'll jump in before the workout, or my cold plunge I got rid of my cold plunge because it wasn't very good, so I'm getting a new one. But I would go from the cold plunge to the infrared sauna and back and forth. And it's just, it's part of the healing process. I'm 66. I can't just go charge downstairs and then get, 7 hours of crappy sleep and hope that the next day I have the energy and enthusiasm and the wherewithal to get after it again. The 24 hours come and go, and I want to work out 6 days a week. So that mindfulness / recovery behavior is critical. And I used to try to get by in 7 hours of sleep. There you go. You're checking it out.
You got one of these?
I don't have my smartwatch on right now, but it's just, it's all, a lot of it's tech, and people aren't into the tech thing. But, a cold plunge alone, the super proteins that are created inside your body, and it's miserable and horrible, and I hate it. Hate the cold plunge. I just would rather eat glass. But man, when we go back and forth between that and the infrared sauna, and a lot of people don't have access to this stuff. They don't have room for it. They can't afford it. But anybody can buy a foam roller, right? Anybody can take a freaking fighter nap for 15 minutes. There's different ways to do it. You know what I mean? On a budget or whether you're loaded, there's a way to do it. And if you really do care about yourself and you want to be consistent, because it's about consistency, man. I don't care. Intensity's there, right? And purpose is there, obviously. But it's like the more you do, the better you get. Nobody shows up to work 3 times a week. Nobody just eats like 7 meals only every week. What are the things that you do constantly to sort of sustain your lifestyle? And if sustaining your lifestyle is enough, well, then fine. You'll die young, overweight, and miserable, whatever. But if you want to thrive, then you do these things and they become part of your lifestyle, and you prioritize this stuff. And then you can go to Italy with your wife and get on a bike for 4.5 hours in the Appian Way, which Caesar built from Rome to the Mediterranean Sea. We didn't do the whole trek, obviously, but you know what I mean? Like other people are in their cars, like 100 yards away, taking pictures of us on our bikes on the Appian Way. Couldn't Caesar make flat rocks? Weren't there? No. It was like the things were so. Put boulders, it's like riding a bike on bowling balls. It was crazy. But, whatever. Being in shape allows you to see the world and travel the world and have more energy and be more enthusiastic and more creative and more productive. And without it, you're in survival mode. And Shauna's cousin died at 59 from being overweight and all the things that came with it.
And that was the second part of the story I was going to tell you, which is really interesting because, and again, it's just kindred spirits here because again, the things you're talking about my sauna just got put in the backyard last week. I got a big old barrel. I did an almost heaven barrel sauna. I want a traditional sauna, but it doesn't matter. The intricacies again, infrared is cool. And the one you talked about, I was looking at, it's a great sauna. I just
They
wanted to
don't
do
get
something
as hot
outside.
though. Infrared doesn't get as hot.
That was the
It's more
point.
about the infrared, not about the heat.
I
So,
wanted 160. I wanted something that was going to get boiling hot.
Yeah, I mean, the good ones get up to 220, probably like the one that you has gets over 200 degrees.
It's hot. It's hot. But what I was going to tell you was, so the second half of my jiu-jitsu story, which is really the interesting one that I'll finish with, is that you go through your division, and it's people your age, your skill level, and your weight. Those are the three variables. They're not going to put a 56-year-old guy who might be a white belt with a black belt who's 56. And,
Right.
They're not going to put a 56-year-old, 168-pound guy against a 56-year-old white belt, 230. It just doesn't work that way.
They know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to keep people from getting hurt. Yeah.
The problem is there aren't that many people in their late 50s who are starting out with jiu-jitsu. So as a result, in Austin, there are no 55 to 60-year-old white belts, 168 pounds. All they had was a series of people who were the closest were 45 to 50-year-old, 168-pound white belts. So I decided to go against that group, right? You're not going to die. What's the worst that happens? And as I posted this morning, everybody should do something every day in their life that makes their legs tremble with fear. Something that makes you so uncomfortable that you literally have to push yourself into doing it. Otherwise, you're never growing. And so yesterday, before I got on the mat, my legs were literally shaking because I was so nervous about going against these 45-year-olds. I ended up getting a silver, but I didn't earn it. The guy in the finals just utterly destroyed me. I'm telling you now, this guy came from Mexico for sure, but he was a wrestler. I'm sure of that. But he did come from Mexico. But the thing about it is everybody becomes friends. And there was a guy there who came in third when we were on the podium. And I went up to him afterwards. It's like, hey, man, he says, I can't wait to go against you again in Vegas, which I'm doing again in 7 weeks. And I said, I apologize, man, but there's actually some people my age in that Vegas tournament because it's the Worlds, and I'm going to go against my age. Sorry. But I joked with him and said, don't worry, when you hit 60, which is basically the open division at that point, like it's called Master 7, it's the oldest division. If you're 60 or 80, you're in the same division. There's nothing after 60. I said, dude, in 14 years, when you're 60 years old, we'll go against each other. It'll be amazing. He looked me in the eye, Tony, and he said, that's not going to happen. I said, why not? He said, because I have terminal cancer. He says, I have terminal brain cancer. I said, what? And he went like this. I posted on my Facebook. He puts his head down and he shows a scar where he had a craniotomy done a few years ago. And he said, a couple of years ago, I went to an oncologist and they diagnosed brain cancer. And they told me I was going to be dead in 6 months. And again, I'm not going to say it here because I don't know who's listening, but he said, I told him, F you, who the hell do you think you are to tell me how long I've got to live? And so now I think 2.5 or 3 years later, he's training, he's working out, and he's competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments still. I was so moved by it, Tony. I gave him a big hug. I put my head on his shoulder, started tearing up. I was crying. And I just sort of like whispered in his ear. I said, brother, I love you and I'm praying for you. And I said, you're an inspiration. And here's a guy who's been dealt a hand that none of us, it's literally our worst nightmare. None of us has a nightmare worse than that you go into a doctor and he says, you've got terminal cancer and there's nothing we can do. And yet this guy is focused on living, not on dying. And if you can't get inspired to live your best life when you meet a guy like that, if that doesn't inspire you to get up off the couch and get your body moving, what the hell is going to get you going, folks? And so again, your concept of biking in Italy when you're 66 years old and likely when you're 86 years old, okay? Like Mick Jagger, I just got a video of him. He's 80 years old. He's running around on stage. He's a little bit altered at times, I suspect. But
well, yesterday, a buddy of mine brought his partner, his work partner here. I met him once, I guess, briefly last year at this event, this Idea World thing. His name is Fred. He was 74 years old. And like my buddies are like, and then the other guy who came, he was 67. He's a year older than I am. And he's kind of fit. He's got a little belly on him, whatever. And my other buddies and all the guys I work out with are all in their 30s and 40s. I'm the only guy in their 60s. And these two older guys show up, both gray hair. One's lost all his hair. And they're like, oh my God, what are they? Because Sunday workout is a monster. Ropes, pegboards, ninja course, killing it. You know what I mean?
I've seen them. I've watched your Sunday morning workout.
I mean, there's blood everywhere. There's it's people get hurt. It's intense. we got one where we go up a pegboard, we climb a beam that's like 17 feet off the ground that holds up the house. You ring the bell, you go down the rope, you go up the rope, you ring the bell, you go down the beam, across the pegboard, max pull-ups, like, whatever. How's these two? And then, so we're all looking at each other like, I don't know. They're coming here for the first time. I explained to them in a text. I said, hey, this is going to be intense, so just do what you can. Both these guys smoked it like freaky. Not every exercise, but they were, like, the 74-year-old guy, his name was Fred. He was an inspiration. And I told Fred, I said, dude, as a 66-year-old, I feel like I'm at the tip of the spear with all my friends. I don't have any examples of somebody 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 years older than me that's kicking ass. And just seeing you, watching you, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to be okay between 66 and 74 if I do, if I keep on keeping on, right?
It's true. And at the end of the day,
whatever inspires you. That guy inspired you, and Fred inspired me yesterday. It was awesome.
Gosh, if you ever want to see the guys who are the tip of the spear, go to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. Just go to one and watch the oldest guy. I saw guys there competing at least 10 years older than me, black belts, who are spinning and rolling and taking hits that would hurt most normal people. And I'm not saying hits like punches, but like there's a guy leaning on them. They got a shield up with their knee. They're spinning around. They're putting people in the arm bars at 70 something years old. Those are the people I want to be like. And if you're a Peter Attia fan, and I am, I love the fact that he changed the term from lifespan to health span. That who cares if you live to 90, but you can't hear, you can't see,
right.
You can't travel, you can't have sex, you can't do anything, right? He changed it to health span, that you live into your 90s and then something gets you. We're all going to succumb to something, but live your best life until you can't live your best life anymore.
And Glenn, I think the one thing, since you're a jiu-jitsu guy, when you go on to powernationfitness.com, I want you to look up Michael Bradley. He's one of our trainers, and he's got one called Primal Flow. And then he's got another one called Wild Animals. It's all animal flow stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with animal flow, but you're on the deck, dude, and you're going from beast to crab to lizard to dragon. And these combinations, it's like, it's like capoeira, but it's an ass kicker, man. There's more. I think it's the closest to what's the term I'm looking for? Compound. It's one of the best compound movement sequences I've ever seen ever. Unlike squat, curl, press with dumbbells, you're on the floor rolling around like a little kid. But these are very interesting, sometimes complex movements that take some time to learn. And Michael has been like, every month we have our 9 trainers, and they all get paid based on how many hours. And Michael is smoking everybody else because people who had never done it before, never heard about it before, people who are terrible at it are in love with it because it's so fresh and so different. And animal flow is this thing that has been around. It's been around a while, but Michael has made it more popular. And there's other people too that are beginning to get certified in it. And it's fountain of youth stuff, man. It's as good or better than yoga, I think.
Well, it's funny because you said you just took a page out of your Ab Ripper X, because people I hate it, but I love it. I love it, but I hate it. I don't remember which one you just said that. It just brought back memories. And I could do this all day long with you, Tony, but I know how busy you are. I'm going to endeavor here right now to anybody listening to say, I'm going to do everything within my power to get Tony Horton on the main stage at Caesar's Palace 2025. I'll tell everybody out there right now, I haven't really announced this much. 2025 Caesar's Palace Summit is going to be the first summit we've ever done. Usually it's management, leadership. It's the first summit we're ever going to do that's actually going to have equal amounts of clinical techniques with management from the biggest names in orthodontics. And best of all, we could have Tony Horton. He's an orthodontist. If you guys didn't know, he trained at UCLA. He was an orthodontist for about 11 years before he became a trainer, right, Tony? You were an orthodontist.
Yes.
Yeah, you see?
I got to get that space, though. I don't like that space. Like that's not orthodontics.
Joking aside, I could find you about 20 people right this second who will gladly close that space up for you. If you're in Dallas, I'll take care of you, Tony.
I think that's gums. I think that's bringing the gums down like a little graph or something. I don't know what that is.
I don't know. If
I just shave it, get a little sandpaper in the center, and then it'll close up by itself?
Look at you knowing all about IPR. If you've been to somebody, but all I'm going to say is if you go to a certified orthodontic specialist, and I'm happy to put you in touch with one, They will take care of that for you, guaranteed. And
fix that for me, man. I don't like it. I gotta walk around like this,
Well, we're gonna fix that.
They're pretty good otherwise.
You know what I do like? I really like you, and I like having you on the podcast. And just keep inspiring people, because, like you said, all of us who are trying to push the envelope at certain ages, we feel like we're the tip of the spear. But we look at guys like you who are 10 years, like we were joking before we started, we're sitting here posing off before we start. You're 10 years older than me. You look way better than I do. And you are inspiring me the same way Fred inspires you. And we all need people like, never be the smartest person in the room and never be the most fit person in any room. That's the best secret to life that I've ever come across. And
as a result, just to tag that is that's your growth, that's your progress, that's your getting outside of your comfort zone, that's you dealing with your fears, which makes you a better person as you get older, mentally, physically, emotionally better as we get older. And that most people are in decline after the age of 35, and it doesn't have to be that way.
I agree 100%. And
if I had a mic, I'd drop it right now.
Drop. That's a pen drop right there, folks.
I don't have a mic.
For all you Hortonians out there, that was a pen drop.
There you go. But
it's been an absolute pleasure with you here today, Tony. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I mean it when I say it to you and to everybody out there. I'm going to figure out a way to get you to 2025 Summit so you can speak on stage, so you can do a workout, so I can give you a big hug and say thank you for the fitness journey you got me started on in 2004 when my twins were born and I couldn't do triathlons anymore. And so,
well, Glenn, I would love to. You have Shauna's contact, I believe. You got a hold of me here. So, I have a speakers bureau now. I guess I have to go through them, but whatever. It's easy. We'll figure it out. If it's Vegas, it's easy. Boom, we're there. So,
all right. Have a wonderful day. Good luck. And before you sign off, one more time, the URL so everybody can remember it.
mypowerlife.com if you want the supplements, and then powernationfitness.com if you want to know more about the programs and everything there. Also, you can go to tonyhortonlife.com. That's a website, and you can get it all there. If you want power stands or T-shirts, or if you want to know where my next ski yoga retreat is in 2025, there's all the events tabs are there, clothing tabs are there, and supplements are there too. That's the one-stop shop. I want to try that out.
And we're going to make sure we put everything in the show notes so that if somebody wants to learn more, if they want to know just a code to use, we've got everything in there.
Got it. Great.
And again, Tony, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your time.
Glenn, pleasure, man.
Thank you.
Take care.